It is with great pleasure to announce this year's Hall of Fame inductee, Peter Rummel. Peter has been active in the real estate development industry for over 40 years, creating some of the most recognized projects in the world. He began his career in 1971 with Sea Pines Company, the developer of Hilton Head, South Carolina, and Amelia Island, Florida. In 1977, he became general manager of Sawgrass in Florida for the Arvida Corporation. Peter joined Rockefeller Center Management as vice chairman in 1983 and went on to be president of Disney Development Company in 1985. Disney built more than 20,000 hotel rooms during Peter's tenure from 1985 until 1997. He was involved with the creation of Celebration, Florida, a city originally developed by Disney. He's currently active and past chairman of the Florida Council of 100, a nonpartisan organization of Florida's leading CEOs. Peter is past chairman and on the board of the Alliance for World-Class Education, an advocate for public education in Northeast Florida. And he's also on the board of Avalon Bay Communities, one of the largest publicly traded real estate investment trusts. Peter has a bachelor's degree from the University of North Carolina and received his MBA from Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania. As you can see, Peter has been a very busy person, and we are honored to have him as a member of our Hall of Fame at the University of Florida. So Peter, if you'd please come up and receive your award. Congratulations. I'm going to park it right down there.
Kelly, thank you very much, and thanks to all of you. I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to focus on the students in the class here. I'm going to give you some free advice. I'm going to tell you a quick story about career making, and then I'm going to read you something that has always been important to me. And the first thing I want to do is I want to give you a rule of thumb. Now, if you're in the pharmaceutical business or if you're in the fast food business, this may not apply. But in the real estate business, I'm going to give you an inside hint here that I promise you is worthwhile. Never, under any circumstances, waste time inventing something when you can steal it. Just remember that. You may have to repaint it, you may have to turn it upside down, you may have to do something else to it, but the lesson I learned from Charles Frazier at Sea Pines in the early 70s was he would pay for your airfare to go anywhere if you were going to look at an idea. And particularly in today's world when everything is Googleable and you can bring everything up on your desktop, in the real estate business, there's no substitute for going and looking at something that you think you may learn from. And I promise you that it's different than reading about it on Google. So keep it in mind. My second pearl of wisdom is going to be a short story. I'm now, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm now at the age where lots of my friends send me their children for career advice. Actually, I had a granddaughter in a couple weeks ago, which was particularly depressing. She's a very nice person, but made me feel really old. But one of the things I'm always hesitant to tell a rising 25-year-old is the role that serendipity is going to play in your life. And I want to tell you a quick story that is my favorite example of it. I was running a resort called Sawgrass in North Florida in the mid-'70s, and it was mostly second homes. And one of the people who was the second homeowner was the the chief of operations for all of the Rockefeller assets. He was the most senior non-Rockefeller person involved. And he had a second home at Sawgrass, and I got to know him a little bit. He and his wife were leaving to go back to New York and asked me to have lunch. I did, and I walked them out to the parking lot. And as we walked out to the parking lot, there was somebody dropped a paper cup in the parking lot, so I just absentmindedly picked it up and said goodbye to them and went on their way. A couple weeks later, I got a call from a head of human resources for Rockefeller asking me if I wanted to come interview for the job. One thing led to another. I got the job, and I moved to New York. A year later, I was talking to her, and she said, "You know how you got that job? You know how you got that job, don't you?" And I said, "Well, I assume it's because I'm brilliant and handsome. It's got to be the reason. The reason why." She said, "No, wise guy. It's because you picked up a paper cup." David Rockefeller was obsessed with making Rockefeller Center the cleanest place in the heart in New York City. And when I picked up that cup, it said to this guy who was looking for the new head of Rockefeller Center that I had an instinct of some kind. And now it doesn't mean that I didn't have the other qualifications that it took, but it was picking up that cup that differentiated me from all the other people they were talking to. It's a happy story. It was a good job, so on and so forth. The only downside is I haven't been able to walk by a cup for 30 years without. But you have to be prepared. You have to be ready. You have to be qualified. But funny things happen, and just understand it and appreciate it, and for God's sake, take advantage of them. I want to read you something. There's some people in this room who will know who this guy is. John Gardner was Lyndon Johnson's first head of what was then HUD, Housing and Urban Development. It's now morphed into HEW. He also started one of the early sort of political movements called Common Cause, and later in his life was a professor at Stanford, where I got to know him a little bit. He was a prolific writer, and this was in the middle of a paragraph, in the middle of a chapter in a book, and it jumped out at me 30 years ago, and I've never been able to forget about it. And I want to share it with you. The things you learn in maturity aren't simple things such as acquiring information and skills. You learn not to engage in self-destructive behavior. You learn not to burn up energy in anxiety. You discover how to manage your tensions. You learn that self-pity and resentment are among the most toxic of drugs. You find that the world loves talent but pays off on character. You come to understand that most people are neither for you nor against you. They're thinking about themselves. And you learn that no matter how hard you try to please, there are some people in this world who are not going to love you. A lesson that's at first very troubling, but in the end really quite relaxing. Thank you all very much.